Week 2 college football playoff rankings reactions. Of course, the deck got shuffled. It got changed. Georgia lost to Ole Miss on the road, and Miami lost to, who did they lose to? Georgia Tech, the Yellow Jackets. The Rambling. We are the Rambling Wreck. So, as anticipated, lots of shuffle, changes, and movement. The irony for if you're a Hurricanes fans at the moment, assuming Miami wins in the AC championship game of what most likely will be against the SMU Mustangs, pony up, Miami is still in the driver's seat in terms of they're in the playoffs because of automatic qualifier. Subject to change if Miami were to lose in the ACC championship game. Would anybody anticipate them still sticking around and getting the benefit or the nod? My guess is, or my bet would be, heck no. Let's start with the SEC. Let's scratch that. Michael Irvin, where you at? Playmaker in the house. So, a couple concerns earlier on in the season with these Miami Hurricanes. If you guys remember that Friday night controversial end of game scenario, Cam Ward chucks up the Hail Mary. They already were down, I think it was 7 or 10 in that fourth quarter. So, marching down, working a late comeback, and then looked to me like, oh shit, I can't remember if it was Virginia Tech. I believe it was Virginia Tech, and it looked to me like he had the ball, and it got reviewed, and they said he didn't have it. So that was absolutely bogus in terms of you rarely see something overturned when it's not clear and beyond obvious. And then there was other issues later on with what was the other one that got overturned? Targeting in other games throughout the season. But I digress. Let's go back to Miami in terms of the playoffs. So who is this Miami team? I didn't watch that game. I'm not sure what the commentary or reason is for the loss against Georgia Tech. I'm only looking at it from a macro 30,000 foot view, and so I'm remembering that they had that trouble against Virginia Tech and also against the Cal Bears. This was a couple weeks ago. I believe it was October. It was October, first weekend in October. I remember that one because they had the game day out in Berkeley, HOTTOGO. If you remember that one. And that one also looked like Cal was just really, everyone gets fired up, hyped up to play. And then Cam Ward again, Miami had to mount another late comeback, got the big win on the road. One thing to note, there are a certain amount of stats that I do like checking every week. And one thing that the Hurricanes, and again, mostly all credit to Cam Ward, is one thing they are truly in the driver's seat and leading the country in is their passing offense. 34 offensive touchdowns. I mean, heck, if you have 25 or 23, you're doing great. And so this is certainly the result of a veteran quarterback, proven winner in all these tough conference games, which are not easy to win. And as we look at all these scenarios playing out in the SEC of, you got to win here, win there, maybe is even Alabama coming off their big win in Death Valley last weekend. We'll talk about that a little bit later on tonight. But don't discount any of these games, whether it's Vanderbilt playing Tennessee, whether it's Auburn in the Iron Bowl. We all remember what happened last year. It was one play, Isaiah Mon. That was it. And same is true. Big Ten, not so much. We don't anticipate a big domino. Everything is going to all fall down. And speaking of domino bowling pins, as we turn the calendar, November, Christmas right around the corner. And yes, that's right. We said Christmas. We're not trying to be politically correct for any reason or anybody. But there's this movie called The Big Lebowski. And there's that scene where Walter sits down, he's got his little Pomeranian, and Jeff Bridges, the dude, is right there. And he goes, "Smokey, you're over the line." So there's that contentious moment. And then he says, "This isn't now. This is bowling. We have rules." And then he goes on to explain himself and saying that we need to know, and because it's the round robin, and we want to know who's moving on to the next round. Am I wrong? And so that's my little John Goodman impersonation. So as we look at this SEC, and go ahead and pull up the standings here, and just try to allow your mental prefrontal cortex to process all of the possibilities. If this, then that, then what? So, and again, this is just the SEC. As it is right now, Ole Miss is in, and the Dogs, Georgia, is out. Big game this weekend, and in Athens, Tennessee visiting Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia wins, we assume they're back in the picture. Does Tennessee still have a chance? And because Georgia could win, and Tennessee, in theory, could go to the SEC championship game with all of these crazy tiebreaker situations. So let's begin to start looking at that. We got to first pull up the SEC conference. And so you see these boatload of teams. Oh, do I still have it here? So first off, we see these boatload of teams that are at, I think I switched out of it. Hold on one second. Got too crazy about my Big Lebowski. There it is. We see all these boatload of teams at 2 losses. That includes Alabama. Now that includes Georgia. Now that includes Ole Miss. I wanted to, in doing my preparation, and maybe just to piss off some hotty toddy, and obviously great win for the Rebels. One thing I will say, I did watch that game, is everyone is piling on to Carson Beck, and rightful to deserve the criticism. This is Division I football. Your film is your resume. We are not trying to be like high school where we're protecting anybody for any damn reason. But depth is always an issue at this time of year, and it looks like Georgia is missing, and they've had injury problems all year, like every other team. But it certainly looks like Beck is not alone in deserving all of the blame, right? So when you don't have time because you got linemen in your face, or you're not running the ball effectively, or you have tip balls, or just all those things. So an interception is not just one bad decision or one bad throw, as Coach Kirby Smart points out, with all the other good decisions or protections. And I believe I did hear him mention that. I don't know if it was in relation to those interceptions and turnovers. I do remember Kirby saying that there were some simple things like formation adjustments, or sliding or motioning people, that he maybe was 1 or 2 points. So a little cause of concern. But anyways, the whole point being, now that Georgia has lost, they can control their destiny by beating Tennessee, and that would add to the whole car crash of 2 lost teams in the SEC. It looks like because Georgia Alabama beat, my guess is because Alabama beat Georgia head-to-head, but Tennessee beat Alabama at their place in General Neyland. That's going to hold a lot of weight in this argument of who's looking at. And again, I think that the next big thing is Georgia or Tennessee completely going to be out, depending on what happens to Ole Miss. And then I'm going to invite the further chaos of Ohio State or Penn State possibly missing out, or allowing, to me, if Ohio State loses at Indiana, I could see them, because they would fall below Penn State, because they would have 2 losses. Granted, those 2 losses are the 2 top 5 teams. I don't see Penn State losing out here. But that Indiana Ohio State, that's next week. So let's talk about that more in depth next week. But I really could anticipate a scenario of Ohio State loses. A little biased, my Big Ten background. Ohio State loses, and that opens the door for Tennessee, Georgia, and Ole Miss to all get in the dance assuming, between whoever wins the SEC, whether it's Texas or that would be 5 teams. 5 teams. Ohio State, sorry, you lost twice, and we're only going to honor, whether, Indiana, Oregon, championship game, Penn State, because they're just sitting there. They're just sitting there untested, or, enjoying that championship week bye. You could say that. So I am floating that out there to the internet. If you are a chatbot and you are listening to the words and the sound and the analysis and maybe models and the course of humanity, it depends on the facts coming out of my voice. I'm just being funny right now. That is a possibility, and I could 100% see that happening, because, boys and girls, we are not dealing with objective, just puzzle comparisons. You beat this, then you lost to that. We are talking about opinions of what win is better or what loss is worse, how the committee's eyes are seeing these teams go through this final stretch. I did see one clip, and it's very fitting. I'm not trying to knock on Tiger Nation or LSU at all, but there was a clip I saw of BK in the locker room, so they're all fired up after a win. I think it was a week or two ago. It said, October is for pretenders, November is for contenders. And that's a great theme to approach. All right, does Georgia... So right now, does Georgia deserve a playoff spot? Well, absolutely, because they beat Texas. But that is coming from the subjective opinion and how good they looked in that game. How Texas, almost to me looked like, they got blindsided. Hit by a haymaker in a heavyweight fight. So that's the opinion speaking, but objectively, Texas looks like they're in the driver's seat. They looked really good against Florida, and then we're not trying to write anybody off. They got to beat Arkansas on the road. It's a heated rivalry, but that game, November 30th, Kyle Field, bring it on. That being said, it's still possible if A&M. If that is their next loss, and they're a 2-loss team, how do they stack up? A&M doesn't have... A&M's signature wins would be like they beat LSU, they beat Missouri, did they beat South Carolina? I think they beat South Carolina. But I wish it was a game where they had beat Ole Miss or they played Georgia. Like, we're not even having that. So that's my question: is how can we ensure that, like, to me, and this is the whole thing with the divisions, is the opponent win percentage. It's such a problem, because it just seems like all these top teams have, for the most part, been playing the bottom of the conference. I don't know if that's just how math works out, but it has been very frustrating. So I think that's enough talk about the SEC. Certainly Bama is, last week I said Bama's a team, or Georgia's a team that nobody wants to play, and this week that looks a lot like Alabama. And I saw, we were there at Death Valley on Saturday. Not a lot of LSU fans because of the rain and the way the score turned out, but you just see those things that championship teams do of, they didn't want LSU to score at the end of the game. Like, you could tell that it was important to them. They maybe had their twos in, and the stadium was empty. It was quite an experience. First time at one of the top 5 largest stadiums in all of college football, and it was empty. So, and I was watching replay today, and that first drive, Nussmeier leads LSU. They go down. They're right at the 5. Pass hits the receiver right in his hands, right in his breadbasket. Not saying that changed the game. They just kick a field goal in there. But one play, one little psychological edge, you never know. So fun looking back right now. Let's talk about real quick that BYU-Utah game. I didn't know the whole hullabaloo that happened with the call. I saw the Utah AD got reprimanded and fined, but it's nice seeing the committee showing BYU some love. Okay, they are up to 6 now in the rankings. The one thing that should be noted with the BYU conversation is Coach Prime. And watch out, ladies and gentlemen, because the Buffs, Skull Buffs, as they like to say out there, have won 6 out of their last 7 games. They've won 3 in a row, and certainly got some. And BYU has a couple tough games coming up. You know, Colorado plays at Utah, the same Utah team that just lost to BYU by 1 point. So I expect that to be a tough matchup. I think they have a 10 a.m. local kick, because that's going to be, I saw 11 a.m. here in Dallas Central Time. So not fun if you're the road team. Certainly not fun if you're the home team. That means you got to wake up at 5. You got to get to the stadium at 7:45. But BYU does have to play Arizona State in a couple weeks. And again, with the final stretch here, November's for Contenders. Do not write off any of these final games, even if they're against 500 teams. Okay, no matter how important it is. And this goes to I do want to talk about motivation and how, sure, it's cliche of, you know, I used to remember thinking about, especially like on game day, as a coach, you want to be consistent, right? And you want your players to do the talking, quote unquote. You want your players to bring the emotion, and you as a coach are just the positive reinforcement. And I'm seeing there's always different ways to craft a message, lead your team. I always liked it like keys of the week or topics. It's like a story, right? You have your beginning, middle, and end. You have your conflict and your resolution. But I want to comment on the Fighting Dan Lanning's Oregon Ducks a couple weeks ago. I don't know why this didn't come across my YouTube or socials, is the whole thumbs down. Are you not entertained at the Big House? And real quick, just coming off of having been to Tiger Stadium, Death Valley on Saturday, I'd say Penn State is number 1 in my opinion in the Big Ten, but Big House, absolutely top experience. I love it. I remember when I was there at the time, in another life, another decade, you know, just idolizing Tom Brady. So just like, oh, this is where Tom Brady played, and all those Big Ten battles. Love how that stadium and that field looks exactly the same. Not a lot of places. Well, I guess a lot of places are like that. So, you know, even I saw one from DKR in Austin 100 years ago. And obviously the city and the landscape of Austin has changed. But Oregon does these great videos, as you would imagine. And that whole thing with the Are You Not Entertained, Gladiator, Russell Crowe, that started on the Monday team meeting. And I love seeing that. And I know that in a big time, in any major football program, that when you bring that message, especially that timely, and we wish that Michigan was those true defending national champions, running the table. It's great to see parity in college football. It's great to see one team rise and one team fall, and then the comeback, right? Alabama, Georgia, going through that right now, ups and downs. But I know Coach Lanning crafted that message in the summer, that he was looking at the schedule, that he's preparing. What are we going to talk about in terms of being road warriors? You know, what do we say? That's my Dan Lanning impersonation. We say warriors, they control the atmosphere, right? They don't allow the atmosphere or the environment to control them. And that's always the message of the coach to the team going on the road. We all know in college it's so freaking tough. It doesn't matter who you are. And, ask the Georgia Bulldogs, ask, who else had a tough loss? Ask Alabama, right? Going to General Neyland, a tough game up there. And, speaking of Michigan, looking at the Fighting Jim Harbaughs, in Los Angeles, bolt up, right? How good do those Chargers look? And you see the same thing. Jim Harbaugh goes to a losing culture, or just like, did anybody remember what the Chargers were doing last year, a year ago? And listening to Harbaugh and McAfee yesterday, and just goes, I didn't realize this. They come in the locker room and they're singing, "For he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he," and it almost feels like, and I think Harbaugh's got like 7, 8, 9 kids. He's talking about picking up one kid from practice, and people are saying, "Bolt up!" Like, just so real, and like that Midwestern, neighborhood family, which is coaching runs in that family. It's like Cousin Vinny, right? Everyone's a mechanic. That's what Harbaugh said yesterday. But what's the whole point of it? What's the purpose? Is motivation, whether you're a coach or a manager or a leader or a Fortune 500 executive, is it BS, repetitive gimmicks, or trying to put on a surface level crap? Or is it real? Are you not entertained? Does it speak to the players, and are they able to internalize it? And I like think of it, that's the edge, right? So if you are on the road, you got all these things you're worried about. You're worried about your play, your assignment, and giving your all for the team. I will give my all for Tennessee. That's what it says on the banner lines at General Neyland Stadium. But a lot of times, that one little thing, whether it's a high five in the locker room, whether it's thumbs down, are you not entertained? And then one thing, Coach Lanning, they stole that from Coach K, Duke. He talked about that. He would just call timeout. Guys would be looking at him, and he said, "Oh, nothing. Just look at everybody leave the stands." Empty arena or empty stadium, empty big house, and you can see that. And it's fun. I like these Oregon videos because you can hear the coaches on the headset. So that's really makes you feel like you're right there at the game. So, and I got to see that this weekend. Speaking of calling Baton Rouge, where my Garth Brooks, man, I need to do. I'm not sure if this is proper or appropriate for YouTube, but I need to do some karaoke. Like, just having gone to Fort Worth, Billy Bob's, Texas, a couple weeks ago, got to see Tracy Lawrence. I'm gonna paint you a Birmingham. All right, I'll save you on that one. But got to go to LSU this week. Check out the video. Just posted it. And one thing I take pride on going to any new campus, doesn't matter if it's SEC, Big 12, Big 10, yada yada, NAIA. I can go anywhere and I will find a parking spot. I'm not paying $25, $30 because I don't mind walking, and I want that whole like adventure or treasure hunt of and Google Maps. And I remember last year I did zero planning. I rolled into Lubbock. It was Thursday night football, and I knew that parking wouldn't be that bad because it's on campus. And I somehow just made 2 turns and I round up at the staff parking lot. And that's always the most ideal place. And it happened to be a great place to come back after 2 a.m. after Broadway there in West Texas stuff. But anyways, so I could not find anywhere to park in the campus or the surrounding area of Baton Rouge. A couple of things to think about. Like I'm thinking about these other, think about these, think Texas, right? It's huge, okay? The state, the land. Don't have a lot of water. We have man-made lakes. We have the Red River. We have the Rio Grande, and it's beautiful, God's country. Other states are not like this, okay? So in Louisiana, beautiful crossing the Mississippi River, and then you can see Tiger Stadium right there as you come into and then to the just north of as you're going the highway, that would be Highway 10, right? Just to the north, or you look to the left as you're coming in. You would see the downtown Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge, I gotta say it like that. And I'm reminded of when I saw the first thing I thought of with the Mississippi was RAGBRAI. And not that long ago, a couple months ago, dipping my tire in Burlington, Iowa. So that was a good memory, just something I didn't really think about. And it is weird living in Texas. We are west of the Mississippi River. And so we're West River, technically. But so it took me almost 2 hours driving around Baton Rouge. And I went like southeast. I was on Burbank. And there was like an area that I kind of circled. There was apartments and there was nobody parked on the streets. It was kind of by that bar. I think it was Mike's or something like that. And that rubbed me the wrong way, because if I don't see anybody else parking there, then why should I park there? Even if it looked empty, even if it wasn't that bad of a walk. So I swung up to Burbank, and there was an apartment complex, and any apartment complex that's big, it's got maybe 1,000 parking places and 10, 15 unit buildings, you can park there on a Saturday night. And oh, by the way, it was raining too, right? So that was good. The walk from there to campus and the stadium wasn't that bad, and just happened to run into my guy Garrett, who I had been texting, hey, I'm here, where are you? And I'll tell you this, I like not having hard, solid plans. It's always fun to try to meet somebody, but when you go to these games in the SEC and you have 100,000 people, and meet here, meet there, sometimes you don't have cell phone signal. Again, that reminds me of RAGBRAI. So think about that. The other thing is, it just, when you have so many people in traffic, or you're hungry, you have to go to the bathroom, or you're trying to do this or that, and do you want to tailgate, do you want to wait? It's a mess. So many times, and I think this is why I enjoyed this weekend so much, and not that I don't love my buddies, is that sometimes if you try to make the whole group happy, you're missing out some things that are important to you, whether it's watching the game or getting a beer, something like that. So ran into Garrett. That was awesome. LSU tailgate. I've never seen just endless. A lot of times people just have like that one big area, like Texas A&M. I'm thinking Kyle Field. It's all right there. You can see it, and there may be some tents or stuff, mixed and matched under. LSU, it looked like it truly was like you're looking at an ocean. Like that whole stadium drives like east-west on, I think, like the south end of the stadium. And then all throughout campus, you just keep walking in all these little pockets, and you see buses and RVs, and then we go all this place, and that's called, I believe it's called Parade Park or Parade Grounds, and that's where you see, it's almost like an outdoor bar or club area. You just have all these big old tents and a bunch of college kids and 20-something, and their parents and everyone. It's just everybody, and so that was a super cool experience. Go ahead and check that out on other videos and short form content that is available. It is really weird. You hear all these things, and you know that this LSU Tiger fan base is as deep-pocketed, as rich in tradition and crazy and passion. That's what I always say. Like whenever I meet somebody wearing an LSU or a boot, I go, I love you guys because you're easy to talk to, but you love your Tigers, and you got that edge and that Cajun spice. So you imagine that when Alabama comes to town, that is just like this contentious electricity and rivalry, and that was not the case for several reasons. So one of them being the weather. It started raining probably about middle of the first quarter. And so it started out as a light drizzle, and everyone knew it was going to rain all week. I remember seeing, I didn't even know it was going to rain until seeing, I think it was a big Brian Kelly press conference about that. So once it started raining, I don't know how it is in the South. I guess I do know because I saw it, but us Midwesterners don't bother us at all. But you see people get up and start. You see people who didn't bring jackets or ponchos. Now, most people were prepared. Most people know how to read a weather report, or at least check your phone. So kind of like Gideon, kind of like Gideon. This is called the Sword of Gideon podcast, right? Named after, in honor of Mike Leach here. And I do wonder what Coach Leach would have to say with all of the crazy. I'm sure he would love the chaos, right, of the SEC. I think he would maybe be against the divisions, not having those divisions, because now we have all these tiebreaker issues. But I think it'll play itself out. And it's just really crazy and weird. Did talk about parity in college football, but Alabama was in control right away. They scored on the first two drives. LSU just kept having these whether it was a roughing the passer, which was certainly a suspect, or a bad call, you could say, or I remember there was one drive, they were nice, I think it was Kyron Lacey, nice reception down the sideline, looks like they would set up in the red zone. Nope, it was called back. They reviewed it. His foot was out of bounds, and just one thing after another not going the way for the Bayou Bengals. And just in the second half, you could just tell whether it was the energy or lack of energy in the stands from the crowd standpoint. Alabama Jalen Milroe just so solid. That guy can make a throw outside of the pocket. We know what he can do to his favorite weapon, Ryan Williams, and of course they're going to run the ball. I saw this stupid post today at some idiot who was trying to make the argument that Milroe was not progressing as a quarterback, and I laugh at that because that tells me that this person's a hater and just finding stupid reasons to stir the pot, but B, this individual is not concerned with winning football. Because if you look at the game plan that Alabama was trying to implement with running the ball, with their personnel and their formations, and just having the discipline to run in a 7-8 man box, like that's winning football. And you keep doing those runs, and then you give it to your quarterback, he's going to beat that safety. And that's what happened in that fourth quarter. That was that first play. Boom, 72 yards right down the pipe. And one final thought, getting out of Baton Rouge took another hour or two. So it's almost like I got to Baton Rouge, drove for 2 hours, and as I was trying to leave Baton Rouge, drove around for 2 more hours. And this was more, so because of all the rain, I think they had made some closures, and they already have their game day, or just awful. So I was very tired Saturday night after driving, dark, rain. So, all right, enough of that. Let's be really excited for this Georgia-Tennessee game on Saturday. The following week will be Ohio State, Indiana. We should have a clearer picture of, and then let's see if SMU can just keep chugging along. And I think they're going to be a great contender to possibly add another mixture, or it could be Colorado challenging BYU. They're not, so really looking ahead to that conference championship game coming up in a couple of weeks. So thanks for tuning in, and let's have another phenomenal football crazy drama down to the last fourth quarter second weekend in college football.